to overcome this temptation to quit. And that is one, setting realistic expectation, right? So I think especially as working parents, we have to be very clear that you're not going to make the 9 a.m. muffins with moms if you can't get time off the OR. You have to be aware that you're not going to be able to make every practice, every event that your child has, not because you don't want to be there, but because it is impossible literally for you to have a job and do those things. So being able to set realistic expectations of yourself. What is your bottom line? What are the things that you absolutely will not miss as far as parenting goes? Hi, and welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast, episode number 99. Today on the podcast, I am going back to a topic we talked about late last year on quiet quitting, but today I want to talk about quiet quitting in parenting and how do we overcome the temptation to give up. So on this podcast, we are going to be really talking about what quiet quitting in parenting is. We're going to talk about the consequences of quiet quitting, how to overcome the temptation to quit, and the importance of boundaries and self-compassion when you find yourself quiet quitting. As a parent, it's normal to have moments of doubt and frustration, but sometimes these moments can turn into a pattern of disengagement, and this is what quiet quitting is. Hey mama, you deserve a life free of overwhelm and burnout. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. I'm your host, life and mindset coach, Shiro Bergbauer. I'm also a wife, mom, and CRNA. This is the podcast for high-achieving mamas in medicine like you and I. Together, we'll learn how to navigate the ups and downs of working motherhood. If you're looking to thrive in your relationships and overcome overwhelm in your motherhood, marriage, and medicine, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. Quiet quitting is when we as parents or as humans give up on the goals and responsibilities of like what it is we're here to teach our children without making a big fuss about it. So we may still be physically present, but maybe sometimes mentally check out or give up. Now, one of the most common forms of quiet quitting that I see with my coaching clients in parenting is neglecting self-care. It's when you put the needs of your kids first or your partner first, and as a result, you neglect your own physical and emotional well-being. Now, this can then result in feelings of burnout and resentment, which can then further fuel the cycle of quiet quitting. Another form of quiet quitting in parenting is giving up on really paying attention to discipline and setting boundaries with kids. So when parents feel overwhelmed, they may let their children do whatever they want without consequences. Not necessarily let them run the show, but almost like being in a position of not knowing how exactly to run the discipline bus, and so kind of limiting the amount of consequences, which can then cause the emotion of helplessness when, we don't know what is going on. What are the emotions that sometimes can create the result of quiet quitting? One of them is overwhelm. I was recently talking to a client and on a consultation, and she told me the predominant emotion she feels as a parent is overwhelm. And when she brought that up, I was very honest with her. I said, you are not alone. This is so common with parents, especially parents of teens, young adults, and I think to some extent also parents of toddlers in the throes of the tantrums and all the fun parts of toddler parenting. And so I said, what are the thoughts that you have about just being in this, overwhelm? And two of the things she brought up was she feels unsupported and she feels unappreciated. Now, I want to clarify, while she said she felt unsupported and unappreciated, these are not necessarily emotions. These are thoughts that, she's not getting the support she needs, or the people in her household, her partner, her children are not appreciating the work and effort that goes into parenting. When we get into quiet quitting as parents, right, we want to be able to recognize how it is like showing up in our relationship. Like I said, neglecting self-care can be one of the ways that we do it. The other one is giving up on discipline and boundary setting with our kids. We need to talk about how do we then recognize it. So one of the things I think is interesting is, we are in a culture now where self-care is basically defined by the social medias as, taking a bath, going getting a manicure. We've also started to normalize basic hygiene as self-care. And what I want to offer you is self-care is really when you are on the front burner. It is when you have created room for movement, you have created room for mindset, just taking care of yourself, connecting and with your family, friends, connecting with your therapist or your life coach, and being able to talk through your struggles and different ways that you are dealing with the stress of parenting. That's important to acknowledge. So now, what are the consequences of quiet quitting? First, I think it's important to realize, especially in parenting, one of the consequences is losing that connection with your kid or your kids. Also, that shows up then in your relationship with your partner. You can also then potentially miss out on important milestones or important events in your child's life because you're not clued in into what's happening. You can also miss important events in your own life because you are not carving out time for self-care. One of the things to think about is also how quiet quitting can affect just your mental, emotional well being when you have felt that, it's a lot and you are tempted to give up. I was thinking about, in terms of self care, I think it's so important to understand what kind of self care works for your particular personality and also, what works for your own stress cycles and mindset is one of the ways I think that you can clue in into like what form of self-care works perfectly for me. So think about when you want to set time aside, like when you think like if I had time I would do this for myself. I think that's a clue into what form of self-care absolutely works for you. The second thing to think about when you're recognizing and overcoming quiet quitting is setting realistic expectations for yourself. Now, parenting is a very challenging role, and it's important for us to know that it's okay for us to make mistakes, right? The goal here is progress and not perfection. And one of the things to think about is, perspective. And I've talked about the 5-to-1 ratio as it relates to marriage, right? The 5 positive interactions overcome the 1 negative interaction. So when we can find joy in the small moments of parenting and we can see our children as little humans who are also trying to find their space in the world and their brains are developing and they're also really trying to just navigate childhood and navigate teenage life and young adult life, I think we can see them for being human. Whether it's, reading a book together, playing a game, just snuggling, just the little moments to strengthen the bond between you and your child and remind us like of the very perspective of why we became parents. I recently was talking to one of my coaching clients and she has a young child, a toddler, and we had talked about just, the toddler phase where the kids are, they get a little, I would say assertive, but sometimes to the parents it feels like aggression. And, she expressed that she kind of have felt like she is at her wit's end sometimes and doesn't know what to do. And so I offered her a thought and I said, what would change? What would you want to feel about parenting your son? And we came up with the emotion of empowered. And so we thought about, what would you want to be thinking about yourself as a parent and your child on a daily basis in order for you to navigate that? She so beautifully came up with the thought of, I can help him, with the tantrums. I can help him. Just his little brain is developing and it's braining and I can help him. A couple of weeks went by. We got on a coaching call. She said to me, one of the things I realized was that if I just set intentional time, and it's not a large amount of time, it's literally 20, 30 minutes, put my phone away, give him undivided attention, I noticed that he was more warm and just like kinder in his responses. And I reminded her of the 80-20 rule. So Pareto's principle, which is the 80-20 rule, basically states that 80% of the results come from 20% of the work. So when we think about, connecting with our kids and parenting them, it's not hours and hours of spending time. It's literally the quality of the time we spend with them. So I know for most moms who go through the mom guilt of being working moms, it's like, I don't have enough time in the day. Like, where am I going to come up with extra hours to spend with my kid? And what I want to offer you is, it literally could be just 15 minutes a day of like intentional one-on-one attention with your child. And it doesn't have to be this big blown out, like, we need to spend 2 hours of quality time. In fact, I read a post the other day. One of the CRNA moms that I truly admire, Jennifer Sewell, she was hosting a workshop for her aesthetic clients. And she said her son, who was taking a gap year after high school, the moms were just talking about different challenges of parenting. And he asked Jennifer, could I say something to the moms? And he said, as a obviously young adult now of a mom who worked, a full-time job, I just want to offer you that it's not the quantity of time that you spend with your kids that matters, it's the quality. Kids don't want all of your time. They want your quality time. And I thought that was so profound when we think about what even creates the culture of quiet quitting, is when we think, oh my gosh, there are not enough hours in the day for me to 100% parent, take care of myself, create boundaries, enforce discipline, all of that. And what Aiden, Jennifer's son, said was so profound, because he exemplified the 80-20 rule in real life as a product of that, like, quality parenting from his mom. So if that is something that you've thought about, like, okay, I don't have a lot of time, and what do I do? That is one way to think about it. And the other thing that I was thinking about, just the impact on our own mental emotional well-being when we are quiet quitting, the consistent emotion of overwhelm and frustration and helplessness, it then starts to translate in other areas of our life. And it can also translate into our marriage. It can translate into our friendships. And so it just like continues to build out in other relationships inadvertently when we are quiet quitting. So how do we overcome the temptation to quit? So one of the things is to think about practical strategies to overcome this temptation to quit. And that is, one, setting realistic expectation, right? So I think, especially as working parents, we have to be very clear that you're not going to make the 9 a.m. muffins with moms if you can't get time off the OR. You have to be aware that you're not going to be able to make every practice, every event that your child has, not because you don't want to be there, but because it is impossible, literally, for you to have a job and do those things. So being able to set realistic expectations of yourself. What is your bottom line? What are the things that you absolutely will not miss as far as parenting goes? What are the things that you are expecting age appropriate wise? What are your expectations of your 3-year-old, right? What are your expectations of your 7-year-old? Is it age appropriate expectations? So a lot of the time, especially when we have children who are, highly sensitive or, mature faster than their peers, we may sometimes have that bias of expecting them to act older than they are and expecting them to demonstrate a level of mental and emotional maturity that they cannot actually do. And so setting realistic expectations of behavior, setting realistic expectations of meeting their attachment needs. Are you seeing attunement in them? Do you recognize whether they feel seen? You recognize if they feel heard? Like, literally being appreciated as a human being. I was thinking recently, my husband and my daughter had a little disagreement. It was early in the morning. She was getting ready for school, and she couldn't find her little Wubby bear. Wubby has been in our life since my daughter was born. It's one of those Wubbanoob pacifiers, and she used it as a Bassie, and then at some point decided she didn't want the Bassie, and we took it off. It has been a bear in her life. It's literally the size of my palm, and she goes everywhere with it. She brings it in the car with her to go to school, and she will literally like cry if she can't find it in the morning. And so on this particular morning, she couldn't find it, and it was time to go. And my husband was getting flustered, and so I just heard like the conversation. He was raising his voice like, let's go, and he was telling her in German. And for me, I do speak some German, but sometimes like I have to be very aware of context, because the way German expression is, sometimes what I perceive as yelling is literally just my husband and my daughter having a conversation. But in this instance, I heard this like exclamation translated into English was, that's enough. And he was like, let's go. And I will applaud how he handled the situation, as far as like, okay, we're not going to spend the next 5 minutes looking for this bear, you're going to be late for school. But later on, I had the conversation with him, and I said, tell me what was happening. And he was like, I lost it. And I said, okay, so help me understand. She's 4, her brain is developing. When you create the expectation that she's not allowed to lose it, when she can't find the very thing that she finds creates safety for her, but you have given yourself space to lose it, quote unquote, as an adult, can you see the mismanagement of the expectations? And we had a very deep conversation about that. And I told my husband, I think we don't give toddlers enough grace to be toddlers, yet we give adults grace all the time when they act out in public and, do things that are obviously not age appropriate for a person who should have the emotional bandwidth of an adult. And so I was very honest with him. I said, we have to be very clear sometimes when we are not noticing just the expectations, because sometimes he will say to me, I just like, I don't know how else to discipline her. And, and I'm like, as trying to support him so he doesn't end up in this quiet quitting where he's like, I don't know how to do it. So, I'm just not going to do it, or I'm going to, fly by the seat of my pants. And so I just think that that realistic expectation of meeting our children's brain where they are is so, so, so important. Meeting them and giving them like the ability to have boundaries. The second thing, which I kind of touched on when I talked about the conversation with my husband, is seeking support. So sometimes we can be in the throes of parenting and it can feel very hard and can feel easy to give up on, self-care and discipline and parenting strategies. And, there's so much information out there, and you just like feel sometimes overwhelmed. So seeking support is key, because one, with your partner, you can both like brainstorm ways in which you want to navigate the parenting journey, but also seeking support from experts. So I wholeheartedly like love the work of Dr. Dan Siegel and Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, because it's very science-based, discipline, understanding the whole brain child. For me, why that work has worked very well for our parenting, my toddler, is that I'm able to see where she is developmentally. I'm able to understand her needs and her emotional awareness and her emotional maturity. And so that is a form of support for me, just like going in and reading the literature. I have recently also discovered the work of the J Institute of Parenting. Dr. Kiva Schuler wrote an amazing book called The Parenting Revolution, just the approach of peaceful parenting. And I think like peaceful parenting is like, when you think about gentle parenting, I think people think of permissive parenting. What I'm learning in this space is peaceful parenting is really meeting our child where they are. So having that support, I will link the J Institute's book, Dr. Kiva Schuler's book, in the show notes. It's called The Peaceful Parenting Revolution. It just talks about like what we've carried on as traditional parenting, and we've gone in and on about how it's worked. Are we able to see where it hasn't worked? And, the other form of support is in therapy and life coaching. One of the things that I have gone into also coaching my clients is parenting coaching. And I have to be willing to do that work for myself and to be willing to know my blind spots as a parent, but guide my coaching clients in their own parenting journey when the temptation to quietly quit is evident and when they are feeling overwhelmed and frustration. In fact, I was thinking about a conversation I had with a mom of a teen, and her biggest concern was, my child is very introverted and I'm just like worried for her. And I was coaching her on, okay, so help me understand where this is coming from. And a lot of it is the bias society has about introversion, right? And with coaching and us helping her explore her fears and concerns, one of the things that came up was just this like catastrophizing of, okay, my child becomes socially isolated. What is the consequence long term? And I helped her see, instead of like getting in that panic mode of, okay, what if my child becomes socially isolated? I helped her identify, what if I meet my child where she is? What if I identify that this is who she is and support her 100% and be her sounding board and be her cheerleader and her advocate? The narrative changes, right? So when we have the emotion of we are motivated and compelled and like truly feeling that we know how to best support our children, it changes the game. So seeking support from experts and also just knowing that you as your child's parents actually do know how to parent your child and you do know what your child needs, it just takes a little more effort to understand that. The other strategy is practicing self care. No matter what kind of self care you ascribe to and believe in, are you carving out time for yourself? Are you creating moments of movement and mindfulness and really being in the present moment? How are you cultivating that in your life? And I will link my self care. I have a 5 day self care week where you sign up, and I believe it starts on a Monday and it sends you in your inbox daily just actionable steps for micro self care and self care that works for you. And then you get to decide what your self care practice is going to be. The other thing that I think is important to note here is also focusing on the present moment. I think that is key in avoiding the temptation to quit because being in the present moment helps us focus on what is working right now. Last but not least, I think the importance of discussing with your partner, creating that communication between your partner and also with you and your child or children can create the environment of space where people can freely express themselves and freely show up as who they are and create that shared culture of exploring and navigating the parenting journey together. It's a journey. So I think sometimes we think of our children as they're separate from us and we like just like I hate to use this analogy but almost like using like a little cattle prod. So we just need to have that awareness that like you're using a little cattle prod and you are like showing them the way. And what parenting truly is, it's a journey that we take together with our children and we learn as we grow. I often use the analogy like motherhood is a practice. We learn mothering from mothering. Like, so we are on this journey together with our partners, with our kids, and how can we engage in a way that helps us have that awareness? So what is the importance of boundaries and self compassion when it comes to the possibility of quiet quitting? I think this is so important to consider because, one, the components of self compassion is self kindness, shared humanity, and mindfulness. And the reason I bring in self compassion is because when we are feeling overwhelmed, sometimes we may start to think that we're the only ones. I want to offer you that if you are the predominant emotion when it comes to parenting is overwhelmed, like you are not alone. There's so many other moms that are going through the same struggle. So that common humanity is so important to notice. And, the other emotion that sometimes comes up that we speak about in whispers is being resentful and resentfulness and feeling like there's something really wrong with us, that we are resenting our children or resenting just the experience of being a mom. And I want to offer you like, it doesn't mean anything negative about you that you feel that emotion. It is just part and parcel of the experience. And once you are willing to own that you do feel that emotion and you can ask for help, I think that is critical and you can be kind to yourself in the process. Also, sometimes what happens in quiet quitting or just the overwhelm of parenting is the thoughts that, we are not being good, you're failing as a mom, or you're not good enough. Those emotions of inadequacy and the thoughts of failure, self compassion is critical in navigating that because if you're not showing up in self kindness, you are setting the bar so high for yourself that you are not really supporting yourself. So I want to just like highlight parenting is a journey again, and mistakes are going to be made. And like we talked about in the last episode, failure or mistakes are just opportunities for us to learn and grow. So we are not going to get it right every time. We are not going to be perfect at it. It is a learning experience. Another thing that I didn't mention as far as like parenting and support is joining parenting groups. And I just think that when you have an idea of what type of parenting and discipline works for you, you can find support groups that foster that. You can find sounding boards. And, while social media gets a bad rap, I think that is the one thing that social media has built is creating that community and having that mutual understanding of these are the struggles of parenting and motherhood, and we can do them together. So again, parenting is a journey. We are going to face challenges and we're going to make mistakes, but we can build stronger and more fulfilling relationship with our children by being determined and willing to work through the struggles. And I think about sometimes in the spaces that we're in, it can feel very difficult to be vulnerable and come up and share, the struggles and find your vault, find your vulnerability vault, people you can come and talk to and share just that struggle and share the emotional challenges of feeling like you aren't getting the job right, the parenting job right, and being willing to be aware of that and knowing that you are not alone. You have all the support that you need. And community is important. And I want to let you know that this April, I will be launching a membership. I think I mentioned it before, but I want to share it here because I talked about community. And one of the things that the Mom Club membership is going to create is that community for you to come in there and get support and for you to have that common humanity of the shared parenting experience and also receive coaching and receive support, receive information and education that will help you with your transformation. I've said it very many times on this podcast. Information is great, but transformation is what we're looking for. So the Mom Club is going to be that place for you to get that. So I am going to be creating a wait list coming soon, but if you're interested, just email me hello@stethoscopes2swaddles.com. The details of the membership are still in the works, but it's coming, I promise. Also, if you have not registered for our workshop, it is going to be our monthly masterclass. It's going to be on February 4th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And what I want to offer you is that one of the things that we are going to be talking about is really enhancing love maps, nurturing fondness and admiration, how to build a strong foundation for your marriage. And I think a lot of these lessons that I will be teaching will apply to even parenting. And so you'll learn how to enhance your love maps, nurture fondness and admiration, and improve your communication and connection with your partner. This masterclass is based on the Gottman Institute decades of research on successful marriages and draws on the 7 principles of making marriage work. So whether you're struggling to connect with your partner or you want to strengthen an already healthy relationship, this masterclass is for you. As a 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work course leader, I'll be sharing some strategies and techniques that I use with my private clients to help them just create that fondness and admiration. So attending this masterclass, you will learn how to know what your partner's internal world is, understand what's important to your partner, keep track of, what is valuable to them in the details of their lives. You'll also learn how to focus on the positive aspects of your partner and express appreciation regularly. So by the end of this masterclass, you'll have actionable tools to foster your relationships, love maps, fondness and admiration, and build a strong and lasting bond between you and your partner. So you don't want to miss this. Go to stethoscopes2swaddles.com. Under masterclass, you can register there. I will also link the direct registration link in the show notes. So I can't wait to see you on Zoom. It's going to be great. So in conclusion, quiet quitting in parenting can be a significant challenge, but by understanding the causes, recognizing the consequences, and taking action to address it, we as parents can overcome the temptation to give up. So again, remember, this is a journey we're on, and we're going to face challenges and we're going to make mistakes. So just be so kind to yourself, show up in self-compassion, and just be aware that it is possible for you to build stronger and more fulfilling relationship with your children. It takes a lot of mindset shifts, and it takes a lot of being fully present and understanding your own needs and your child's needs in order to show up as the version of the parent that you want to be. So thank you for joining me. In case you hadn't noticed, I still have this raspy voice, and so I try my best to show up and record this. And I really honor you for showing up for yourself and even wanting to know more. And for those of you that have been so honest and vulnerable in your own parenting journey and have shared your emotions and the struggles, I really honor that because it also helps me realize that this is something that we should be talking about. This is a conversation that we should, highlight because people are struggling with this in silence. And, we don't want to be in a culture where we normalize quiet quitting. And I, for one, want to be the person to support you as a working mom in this journey and assure you that you're doing a great job. You're amazing. You are the best mom for your child. And no matter when the days are hard, you're doing a great job. You're doing the best job with the information you have right now. So be kind to yourself. Be willing to show up in self-compassion. You're amazing. And I can't even tell you enough how amazing you are as a mom and a working mom. And I'm so honored to be in your orbit. So have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week. It's going to be episode 100. What is even happening? And I will tell you a little, like, full disclosure. I literally was like, we're hitting 100 episodes, and we should have hit that at year 2 of the podcast. And I really reeled it back, and I gave myself grace for the times when I wasn't consistent because I was learning. And so I want to offer you, if you sometimes set goals for yourself and you're like, oh, but I didn't do it in that amount of time, it happens to all of us. Just pause and recognize what's working. And thank you again. Have a great week. Bye now.
I'm Shira Bergbauer, and you've been listening to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. New episodes are out every Monday. These episodes are created by me, Shira Bergbauer, and produced by Cassidy Mitchell. If you enjoyed this show or found it helpful, please rate it and review us on Apple Podcasts. If the concepts I share on this podcast resonate with you, or you're ready to change your relationships and mindset, I can help you. If you'd like in-depth, personalized support, I'd love to invite you to apply for my Life and Mindset coaching program. Just imagine you and I every week working together as I teach you the tools to up-level your life. To book your free 1-hour consultation call, go to www.stethoscopestoswaddles.com/consultation. You're doing a great job, Mama. Have a great week. Bye now.